It is really an honor to be here. I have been to Munich before. I haven't been to DLD in quite a long time. Mark Zuckerberg, our founder, was here quite a while ago. Was anybody, I'd love to see a show of hands, how many people were here when Mark spoke at DLD? Well, that's good. It really is a hardcore group. Can we turn the volume down maybe just a little bit? My arrival here was somewhat last minute. I thought it was really important, given all that's been going on for Facebook and our connection to Germany in particular, for me to come not just to talk, but to listen. We don't have a whole lot of time, so I thought that I would speak briefly and then open this up for questions. I had a brief focus group session last night over dinner, and it's just clear that there are a lot of passionate feelings about how we operate, what we do, the ways we make decisions, and how it affects people in Germany and Europe and around the world. And I want to make sure that I have the chance to answer your questions at the same time that I touch on some of the themes and issues that I think have been important to people. The theme here at DLD is Reconquer facing new realities. And that's really relevant, particularly the facing new realities part for us. This last year, it would be an understatement to say, has been a great challenge for those of us at Facebook, and candidly, particularly for me and for the role that I and my team play. We are responsible for working with governments around the world. We are responsible for communicating our policies and practices to the over 2 billion people every month who come and use our service. And candidly, we have not done as good a job as we need to do, because there is clearly an environment today of skepticism, anxiety, concern over how we operate. And that is our reality, and it's my responsibility, and as you'll hear, it is our responsibility to address those concerns. Today, the world is dramatically more polarized than ever before, whether it's Europe moving apart, whether it's the United States becoming more and more politically polarized, where it's concerns about global connection and the risks, the economic risks of greater global integration. The world seems to be spinning apart. And it's clear that many people believe that technology has been a force for accelerating that division. And when people talk about technology accelerating that division, it is easy to think of Facebook as a service that involves communication and the distribution of information as a mechanism for that acceleration. And more generally, that technology is driving people apart, creating haves and have-nots, creating opportunities for some, and removing opportunities for others. I'm here to acknowledge that we in the technology sector in general, and Facebook in particular, have to do a better job bridging the gap between people's reality and expectations and what our role can be. We have to demonstrate that we can bring people closer together, we can build stronger communities, and we can be a force for economic growth, creating jobs and prosperity. We have not served that mission well so far in either our explanations or our investments, and as I think you will see from us and from others, we are going to do more. Many of you may have noticed that Mark earlier this year set himself a new challenge. Rather than a challenge external to Facebook, he identified that his personal challenge was to fix Facebook and to maximize the benefits of technology while minimizing the costs and abuses and exploitation. We have been much better at maximizing benefits, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but we need to do more, and we have begun to do more to minimize those negatives. And I want to talk about what we've done there in 3 areas. First, how do we protect our community from abuse and hate? Second, how do we defend our community from foreign interference and threats to democracy? Those are 2 areas I want to be clear where we have been slower than we need to be and where we have really ramped up the work that we've done. The third area is how do we help promote the experience on our service so that the people who spend time here feel that it is time well spent. And that's an area where, candidly, I feel that we're a little bit ahead of the curve. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So the first is content. How do we do a better job as stewards of our community moderating hate, preventing hate, eliminating the content, and removing it from our service? I was and am surprised at how many people think that Facebook is the Wild West of content, that anything goes, that we are unbridled advocates of the First Amendment in the United States, so that whatever anyone wants to say or however anyone wants to express themselves is permitted. That's just not true. Ironically, we're so often criticized for being an American company, but our policies with respect to speech and expression are much closer to how the standards have evolved in Europe than they are in the United States. We do not permit hate speech. We do not permit incitement. And there's a tremendous amount of content that we remove regularly from our so-called community standards. We publish those standards. We work closely with law enforcement when, beyond our standards, we see that content is being shared, whether it's content related to the recruitment of terrorist activity or hate speech or incitement of violence. We reach out to law enforcement. One of the investments we've made is to have dramatically more people reviewing content because we have been slow and accused of not implementing our own policies effectively. And so we have added thousands of people, including people, I should say, in Germany, who are responsible for reviewing complaints about the content that is shared. We are also investing in AI because we believe that we are going to be able to do a better job removing content more quickly when we can use artificial intelligence or machine learning to identify content that isn't appropriate on our service. In fact, we've already made dramatic improvements in certain areas. Not surprisingly, one of the areas that we've really invested initially as a high priority is content related to terror, terrorism, and terrorist recruitment. 99% of ISIS or Al-Qaeda related terror content we remove and is detected before it is flagged by any individual. And we will move more and more to an environment where we remove clear hate speech from the service. Now, of course, this is central to the public debate here in Germany. And of course, I have to say that for me, the biggest challenge of this speech was not coming and speaking after Steffi, was not coming and speaking after Yossi, but it was pronouncing the name of the law. And I'm going to try. It's Netzwerkdurchsetzungsgesetz. Yeah, okay, so that's, if only everything were that challenge. Okay, it's a hugely important law, not just in Germany, but around the world, because it sets forth both, in my opinion, the right idea for the relationship between government and the private sector, but it also goes farther than we think it should go, and I would hope that people in this audience believe as well. We think it is clear that if the government in any jurisdiction, particularly in Germany or Europe, identifies content that should not be on our service, should not be circulated within that country, it is our responsibility to make sure it is not circulated. And there should be mechanisms to be created to ensure that that happens. And that is a very good part of the law. At the same time, the law places the responsibility for us to be judge and jury and enforcer, determining what is legally required or not on the private sector, on us as a platform. And I think that's a bad idea. I'm not sure that political discourse in Germany, and whether it's appropriate or not, should be judged by any platform company, whether it's a local company or a foreign company. But the challenge over the NetzDG law is how do you develop the right standards for identifying where there are violations or where they're not? And I think this suggests, the challenges of the law suggest the direction for the appropriate balance between a private company and a government organization. Interestingly, the European community has taken a different approach. They have a code of conduct that we commit to comply with. They ask us to report regularly on how effectively we're removing content that is illegal, that is violating the law. And some of you may be aware that just Friday, the latest results of that work were publicly reported by the EU, and 79% of the content that they asked to be deleted was deleted, I believe, within 24 hours. So we are, and that's a significant increase in the amount, both in the speed and the accuracy of the deletions. And that's an example of how we can work with governments to be more responsive to concerns over content. Second challenge, foreign interference. This has been a huge area, and again, candidly one where we, along with intelligence services around the world, have been very slow in responding to the threats to democracy. Our systems were not where they needed to be in response to foreign interference in the elections last year. And certainly we've been very transparent about some of the challenges in the US. We are doing investigations to examine the extent, if any, of interference in other votes, such as around Brexit. But we clearly need to do more and change the paradigm there. One historical note, that historically foreign interference was much more focused on phishing and account access, et cetera. And we actually believe that we were industry leaders in identifying that work and protecting against it. But we, like everyone else, was very slow in identifying accounts that were fake, that were set up for the purpose of propaganda and dissemination of misinformation. And of course, we need to do better, and we've begun to do better. First and foremost, we've changed our policies and tightened our restrictions to prevent and to identify, prevent, and remove fake accounts, because it is those fake accounts that we found are predominantly responsible for the dissemination of misinformation propaganda. We're disrupting the economics of false news. Some of the propaganda, et cetera, was related to economic motivations. There wasn't a political motivation. It was people desiring to make money by sensationalist headlines. And we've done more to remove stuff there. And then, of course, many of you here may be aware, because we used it for the German elections, we're working with fact-checking organizations around the world to identify news hoaxes, to flag those, to downrank them so they get less distribution, and to provide alternative perspectives. So we are doing more, and we will do more. The third is a challenge about well-being, and how do we ensure that our service promotes well-being? And this is really coming in recent. These are announcements we've made over the past couple of weeks. We've changed our service. We've announced, as part of our commitment to transparency, we've announced that we're changing the newsfeed experience to move back to our roots, to putting really, friends and family back in Facebook, and elevating the importance of the content that's shared by your friends and your family, and therefore reducing the amount of content that's shared by other sources, pages, et cetera. And we find that the content that evokes meaningful social interactions, between friends, between family, community, is much more likely to result in people feeling that they are spending their time well when using services like ours, in contrast to passive consumption, which, as you all know, is something that's a much more traditional model of communication and dissemination of information. And I think we're going to do more on that, while recognizing that we still want to create an environment that's hospitable to news. And we also announced, actually just on Friday, that we want to make sure that the news that's available on Facebook comes from trusted sources, and the trusted sources are determined not by us, but by the community itself. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing to make sure that we reduce the likelihood that our service is used in a way that's abusive, exploitative, or harmful. But I don't think it's fair, and this goes to Steffi's introduction. I know that we live in a time when we think, oh my goodness, technology is a source for harm, for evil, for bad. It is easy to go through the cycle, just as a few years ago people thought technology was a panacea, everything would be wonderful, to now think, oh my gosh, technology is Pandora's box, and now when we open it up, life will be miserable. It is neither. It is a tool, and we need to recognize the benefits at the same time that we minimize the dangers and the risks. And the benefits are really quite great. We have a community now that is able to connect, to build sub-communities, to share information and come together. On Facebook today, the community work that we do is really quite important for people to have social action, for people to have economic opportunity, for people to improve the quality of their lives. As just one, two little examples. One is the work that we're doing to support local communities is going to help people identify areas of common interest, whether it's around healthcare or medicine or personal interests, et cetera, and build community and feel greater connection. We think that's important for building strong societies. But the second point really is that Facebook and the tools that we offer are incredibly important engines for economic growth. At a time when people think technology is scary and will distance them and prevent them from getting opportunity, we actually see here in Germany that Facebook in particular and online digital tools in general are an extraordinary engine for building small businesses and making small businesses big businesses. 1 of every 3 small businesses in Germany is on Facebook, and 1 in every 10 small businesses on Facebook says that half of their revenue, half of the economic opportunity comes as a result of their Facebook presence. 300 million people around the world connect to small businesses on Facebook. That's an opportunity that businesses have today that they would not have had in the past. That is the promise of global connection. That is the promise that technology gives today that didn't exist before. I want to give you those as examples of the kinds of things that we can be doing, that we are doing. We can do more and will do more around digital skills. We have people visiting Europe this week. There are more announcements of our commitment, how to help those businesses and how to help other individuals get on the ladder of opportunity that technology provides. But I want to stop now so that at least we can take some questions to hear the topics I've missed or to get the reactions that you have. I have been told that the community here will not be shy. Thank you very much. Sure.
Introductory speech. We have some minutes of time left to ask some questions, so please don't be shy, raise your hand, and he is the guy for the hard questions. So, Ina, please, if you would say who you are.
Yeah, Ina Fried with Axios.
Hey, Ina, sure.
Elliot. On Friday, obviously, you guys said that you're going to identify via crowdsourcing what trustworthy sources are, and I think there was a lot of concern that doing that will just lead people in what you described as a divided world. The people on one side will point to their own sources and the people on the other side. How will that actually improve the problem?
So I think the word crowdsourcing is one you've used. It's not one that we've used. I think what we plan on having a methodology of surveys. So we're not letting people self-select into the process. We're going to do interviews or continue the process. We regularly interview the people who use our service and ask them about the experience they have. We ask them about the sources they use. And I think that we will find, because we've already begun to do this, that the result is not increasing polarization. But you're right in suggesting, look, there were lots of different approaches that we could have to a methodology. One methodology would be that we would get to decide. I don't think, given the history and given the attitude people have about Facebook making executive decisions, that was one that it was a particularly good idea or a smart idea. The second approach would be to outsource it to a third party and to have a body of experts decide. In a polarized world, having a body of experts decide just invites criticism of who that body of experts is. So at least as a start, and again, the history of Facebook is about testing, iterating, improving, we think the idea of surveying users in an appropriate, in a statistically appropriate, thoughtful methodology will actually reduce the likelihood of the polarization rather than increase it.
Next question, please.
I'm gonna go.
The gentleman in the far right.
I hope that was not a political description.
Thank you. I was wondering whether you think the distinction between Facebook as a social platform and media companies is still justified. Sorry, I'm Max from Boda. And when the term social platform was coined, it somewhat referred to a neutral platform, but obviously you're a lot more than that, and it totally changed, and it's news on the platform, you're framing the political discourse, whether you should be treated like media companies with regard to the content that you're actually presenting on Facebook.
So it's a, an ongoing question about what the right label is. I think everyone agrees that Facebook is not a television network. It is not a news magazine. What we do is we present content that is created by others. There is no question, of course, at the same time, that we, in the decisions that we make in designing the algorithms that present information, make editorial, what would be called in other circumstances, editorial decisions. I'm not sure that the regulatory regime that applies to the content that people create should apply to the content that people present that's created by other people. But having said that, there's no question that we have responsibility to make sure that people understand why they're seeing the content they're seeing. And I think you'll see, one of the commitments that we've made and one of the points in Mark's challenge is to make sure that we do better to explain why you're seeing what you're seeing on Facebook. We do that, I think, actually quite well with respect to the advertising. I don't know how many of you use the service, but when we show you an ad, you have the ability to understand why you're seeing that particular ad. What is the targeting that was used? What are the reasons you're seeing it? And what we've done really in the past 3 months, 6 months, and I think we're going to do much, much more now, is to explain any of the changes that we're making to newsfeed, to explain why some content is appearing and why some content isn't appearing. And I think if you look over the past really 10 days, 14 days, we've done a pretty good job explaining that we're moving from a world that does not differentiate between the source of content, friends, family, pages, others, towards one that emphasizes meaningful social interaction. And within the news world, which is candidly a very small percentage of people's Facebook experience, towards a news experience that emphasizes trusted sources. So we'll do that more.
Thank you. Kara?
Oh, hey, I have so many
I
questions.
know. It is amazing that I can travel
make it quick,
halfway
please.
across the world to have a question from Kara who lives down the street.
All right.
But yes.
In any case, I would dispute with you. I think you are a media company, and you all pretend you're not. But that's another issue. You and I could debate that forever. I want to ask a little bit about internally. I was just at YouTube the other day, and we had a long discussion about how the people who run YouTube feel about some of the damage they may have caused in the internal debates that go on within the company. And they were quite frank about how they've been worried about how they haven't managed it properly, including ISIS videos and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that process within Facebook? Because I think people who have left Facebook have been very vocal about that. In terms of being, I gave Dan a hard time here last year about being slow, and it's only gotten worse. So can you talk about, for example, yourself and the leaders of Facebook in that regard?
I feel like I said it. I don't know how much you want me to prostrate myself.
Quite a bit.
Maybe a lot. I think we look back over the past year and say, we were slow and did not respond to things. I think we have overinvested in building new experiences and underinvested in preventing abuse and exploitation from the existing experiences. I think we've been pretty, I feel like I said that. I feel like we've said that as a company. My worry is, as I suggested here as well, is the fact that we need to do better should not detract from the positive that we're also doing. It should not mean that these digital technologies are Pandora's box that are ruining the world. It is that we need to do a better job protecting our community, being better stewards of the service at the same time as we introduce new experiences.
What I meant to say, and I'll let someone else ask, is to me, there's a leadership problem there where people don't anticipate the abuses. I remember being in a meeting when Facebook Live happened, and I suggested that people will kill each other on it, and one of the executives said I was negative. And you know what I mean? Is there a thinking?
I do think, Kara, that's unfair. I think if you look at the election, for example, in the United States, I think it's wrong that we didn't identify the level of interference, but I would also say that the FBI didn't identify it. The CIA didn't identify it. It is not something where only the technology sector. It's not as if Interpol identified it and alerted us. We actually have remarkably open lines of communication when there are real risks, and we do respond very quickly when we're alerted to them. So I think there is a difference between acknowledging mistakes, acknowledging underinvestment, and essentially and saying that accepting all of the responsibility for problems. We are an important part of this community. We have to do more, but we are one part of the community and not all of it.
The gentleman with the glasses.
Yes, good morning. You mentioned that you want to disrupt the economic of fake news. Can you tell us more about concrete measures to kill the clickbait factories?
Sure. I can go into some detail, and I'm happy to get even more from the technical people. We have the ability to look at the links that people go. And the way that we really, the story that I think illustrates it the best is if people click on a story that's a sensational headline, and oftentimes fake news has the most sensationalist headline, and they go and they look at it, and then within a very short period of time they leave it and they come back, meaning they don't really read the story, that's a suggestion that there's a problem with the story. In addition, if you go to the link and you see that the story represents 5% of the page and the other 95% is advertising, then you recognize that the focus of the link is clickbait for the purpose of monetizing the click. And there we've really done two things. One is we've reduced the likelihood that you will click on the link, and to those places where we support advertising, actually three things, where we support advertising on that page, we will remove that page from eligibility to be monetized. That's number two. And then number three, what you find is a lot of the sensational headlines or the fake news, the websites, the URLs, are supported by advertising on Facebook. So they've built their audience using Facebook advertising. We've removed their ability to advertise on Facebook. So it's both the downranking of the link and the removal of monetization from the page and the reduction of distribution by denying the advertising. Those would be three very concrete steps.
Okay, the last question goes to the gentleman with the hat.
Hi, I'm Daniel from Rheinische Post. So I think, thank you for your remarks. I think Facebook is tackling the right questions right now. But in the last years, Facebook invited media companies to work with the platform, to produce for and put content on it. And now many media executives are worrying that everything is vanishing right now with the recent announcements. Are media companies collateral damaged by fixing Facebook right now for you?
So again, it is a fair and excellent question. we are committed. Mark has described, and others have, I think Dan came here to talk about, one of the pillars of the work that we do is we talk about what are the things that we are trying to accomplish, what are the ways that we think our business can be more successful over time, is by helping to promote strong communities. That's what's motivating the changes we announced a couple weeks ago, but also helping to promote an informed society. And so I think it is correct to say that media companies that are most trusted, most informative, most likely to contribute to an informed society are the companies that we want to be partnering with, are the companies I'd like to think we have been partnering with, and will, on balance, benefit from the changes that we make. Now, will the mix change a little? Will the balance? Should we be the only outlet for distribution for a media company? I think that's a bad idea. But should we be an important part? Should we be a good partner to media companies? Absolutely. And I think we have a Facebook journalism project. Jeff's here, we're working on news integrity work. I think you will see some innovations, subscriptions being part of the Facebook experience for media companies, that we are taking steps in that direction. So I wouldn't give up hope, but I think it is fair to say that in light of some of the exploitation and risks, we have to make sure that we protect the ecosystem for all of the people who use it, including our partners.